Welcome to the Businesses Start Here podcast, hosted by David Vigliotti and Vigliotti and Associates. We're here to talk with business owners and business experts to inspire and encourage entrepreneurs.
Hello, welcome back to the Businesses Start Here podcast. I'm your host, Dave Vigliotti with Vigliotti and Associates. I have been looking forward to this episode for a while. I'm here with one of my good friends, Melissa Six, the owner and founder of Compassionate Care Unlimited. I'm going to let her tell you a little bit more about her business. So, Melissa, thanks for being here. I've been looking forward to this. I can't wait to make fun of Todd and start talking about business.
That's great, Dave. Thanks. Thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. And a little bit about our company. We were founded 20 years ago, and the way that this company happened was by accident, which might sound funny.
It happens a lot. You'd be surprised. Most of the conversations I have with entrepreneurs, they didn't plan on doing what they're doing.
Right. So a little bit about my career path. I always knew that I wanted to be a nurse. I had quite a few obstacles in my way. I didn't necessarily have the finances to do it. I didn't know if I was qualified to get through nursing school, but it was something that was really on my heart to do. So, getting through some obstacles there. And then at the time, and this will sound crazy to any nurse that's living in the current day, at that time, there was not a nursing shortage. So I went to nursing school. I had student loan debt. I had personal debt as a result of going to school. And when I finished school, everyone wanted a nurse with experience. So to find a job was a job itself. Yeah. So after a lot of perseverance, I was able to find a facility who would hire me on as a per diem person. So basically, I worked when someone called off. Yeah. So I had no stability. But I was really willing to do anything that they needed me to just to get that experience and, be able to have more options and opportunities.
How long did it take to even find that?
It took over 9 months.
Wow.
To do that, which, potentially could become pretty discouraging.
Yeah, absolutely.
So with a lot of perseverance there, I was able then to secure that job. And then other things opened up as a result of building a resume. And I think that's important for nurses today too, is to never take for granted, building that resume. Yeah. Even though there is a huge, tremendous shortage, just for your own story and your own career path to know and remember where you come from. It's till this day, it's hard for me to say no, because I remember sitting by the phone in my scrubs, hoping that somebody would call off so I could go to work.
Right. I've seen you not be able to say no. So I can attest to that.
So you know that.
Why nursing?
I always had the heart to want to help and to make a difference. And I always admired those in the health profession just for the mere fact that they were willing to work shifts, take care of others. I come from a close family, and seeing different family members that had health challenges also was something that really challenged me to say, this is somewhere that I could make a difference.
Yeah, I was going to ask if there was a person or an event that kind of triggered specifically nursing, because there's a lot of places you can help. I think nursing is one of the toughest. But also probably at times one of the most rewarding. So.
Absolutely. Well, my father is a Vietnam veteran, and we spent a lot of time at the VA hospitals.
Yeah, okay.
And one thing that I saw at the VA hospitals happened to be at that time nurses that didn't really seem like they were enjoying what they were doing. And that inspired me to say, I want to do that, but I want to do it and put my heart into it and make sure that whoever's in my care, that they know that I care about the outcome for them.
Yeah. Huh. That's good. That is, even now you see that a lot with nurses, that it's such a demanding job that it's tough for them to still have that joy in it. So And I see that with you all the time, the joy that you have. I know occasionally you still do nurse, but you spend more time running the business. But I know one of the challenges you have with growing is your goal is to provide as much positive impact as possible. And I know one of the challenges you felt was as you grow, you're losing that connection with individuals. How did you reconcile that, or did you reconcile it? Is it still something you struggle with? So I think there's a lot of people, and I know for my firm, we're at 4 or 5 people now, and as I grow, I'm not going to have the relationship with everybody that I have with the 5 people on the team currently. So how are you dealing with that?
Well, one thing that has really helped us was to make sure that the team that is serving our nurses knows what the expectation is. And the expectation is that, we do anything we can to empower and equip the individuals that we work with, and that we recognize that they are individuals. Since there's such a high demand, it's forgotten. It's, a lot of times people are just seen as their profession, and they're not seen as a mom, a wife, a daughter, all of the other wonderful attributes. And most of the really caring and heartfelt individuals have a long list of other responsibilities. So, they're the people that come to work and give 100%, and then they go home and they're hard charging. They're still giving 100% to their spouse, they're giving to their children. So a lot of times what I see is important and relevant is making sure that self-care happens.
Right.
That to be in their ear and say, it's not selfish to take care of yourself. It's necessary. You can't care for others if you're completely depleted.
Right.
To make sure that you're filling up your own cup, and really to be supportive to each other. So as we've grown in the services that we provide, one thing that's been fundamentally important to me is to make sure that we have a team that understands nurses, and all of the individuals, with the exception of one that's working with all of our professional nurses, are nurses themselves. So,
great.
that really helps give perspective, because each of us have been at the bedside. Each of us have juggled numerous responsibilities.
Right.
So we can completely understand by experience.
Yeah. So, and similar to what you said at the beginning of us talking, that you don't forget where you came from. So because you have people who've been in those trenches, they know what people are feeling when they go through something. And I know we were talking, I think earlier this week, maybe last week, that their nurses get threatened with their physical health because of circumstances completely outside their control. So having been through, maybe you haven't been through that exact situation, but probably something close, you and your team, because you have a team with that experience, are able to empathize with them and really come alongside them and provide the support that they need.
Absolutely. Yes, it's very important to make sure that we're not narrow-minded or narrow vision and only look at one aspect. There's so many moving parts to healthcare, and I know because you work with a lot of individuals that are in healthcare, and looking at you have the financial side of it, and that's problematic in itself. And then you have
very problematic in healthcare.
Right. And then you have the diagnoses and family members, and everyone comes from a different walk of life, so some people may have more support than others. Right. As far as what their needs are. And I feel that a lot of times the challenges that we face is that families are frustrated. Typically, especially during COVID, families were frustrated. They felt locked out, they felt unseen, they felt unheard, they felt fear. How do I know my loved one's getting the care that they need? And they felt the uncertainty that everyone felt.
Right.
So nurses did have to contend with a lot of anger, a lot of, misplaced fear, and there were some that dealt with, threats of I'll come and get you if something happens to my family member. I'm going to find out where you live. What would you feel like if this was your family member? And, you know, really, our nurses did a great job of making sure that they understand that that's the voice of anger. That's
Right.
the voice of, I feel hopeless.
Yeah.
So being able to, you know, do family teaching and patient education, and, you know, when you have the opportunity, checking in with the family and letting them know what's going on so that they didn't feel like they had just been pushed aside.
Yeah, that's good. One of the things we're working on in our firm is being proactive. Because if you're communicating with people, that solves almost every issue. You can mess up, but if you communicate what happened, why, in your industry, you can't mess up, right? But in accounting, at least, in finances, you can make a mistake or miss a deadline, and have that conversation. Because you've been proactive in explaining what's going on, people are a lot more likely to forgive you and kind of move on from it.
Absolutely.
So, and it's not quite the same in healthcare, but there is still that same element.
There is, and we do make mistakes. There's times, you know, we get it wrong with, you know, someone's diet preference, or, you know, possibly a number of things can go wrong, but there is a level of perfection that is expected,
Right.
not only from management or family members, but I feel like nurses as a whole are very critical of themselves, and that's one of the things that I looked at when we started serving professional nurses as an opportunity to say, you know, nurses are constantly giving the feedback to themselves. I didn't do enough. I didn't complete everything I wanted to complete. I had to cut it 5 minutes short with this patient because something came up. And, you know, really putting the emphasis back on the impact that is made and the difference that is made. And one thing that I've said over the last 2 years is, can you leave and tell yourself that that patient would have been better off without you there? And that really re-emphasizes that even if I didn't get it perfect, even if I didn't, you know, do the extra things that I wanted to be able to do, I made sure people got the care that they needed, and, you know, that their medical needs were met. But a big thing missing in the medical community is that connection to those we're caring for, and the connection to the community, because ultimately that's really where the feeling of wanting to care for others comes from, is that, you know, I don't know a nurse that comes into the profession that says, you know, I just picked this and I'm not really sure why. Most have a reason. You know, some it's for the stability, some it's for the flexibility. Others, it is, I wanted to care and do something bigger than myself.
Yeah, that's good. So switching gears a bit, so you work with very close loved ones.
I do.
So do I. Recently we started spending more time in the office. What is some of the challenges and some of the benefits of that? I don't think we've had anybody on the podcast yet that works as closely as you and Todd do together. But it's very common, because that's the cheapest form of labor you can have, somebody that's already under your roof. So I guess back to the question, what are some of the challenges you run into? I've been at the table for some of them, and what are some of the benefits? I've been at the table for those as well. So
Absolutely. Well, let's cover the benefits. Some of the benefits are, you know, it's definitely an asset to have, you know, a person there that can see firsthand and is around the clock understanding your business. And it's definitely an asset to have someone that can truly feel the passion, the time, the energy that you put in, because even if they don't share that same vision, or, you know, maybe for Alicia, she's not as passionate about numbers as you are, but she loves you and she knows that this is important to you. This is, you know, a vision that you have to do something big, and being a part of that, you know, definitely has the opportunity to bring you closer together. Now, one of the drawbacks can be sometimes it brings you so close together that you're butting heads.
Right.
And it's like, why are you doing it that way? I wouldn't do it that way.
Right.
Or, you know, another drawback can be that you have to set boundaries, because otherwise, you know, especially the last 2 years have been challenging for us, because, you know, it wasn't until our 10-year-old said, can we talk about something else other than business related items? Because it was just, you know, from morning until night that there were challenges and things that needed to be taken care of. And so you wouldn't do that typically, you know, if you weren't in the same profession or you weren't in the same business. You wouldn't find yourself.
I find myself, even I think it was last night, I just started talking about a work issue. We didn't preface it at all, and just saying, I did this, this, and this today. And I realized that Alicia was not in work mode at that time, because we still have 3 kids under 9 years old at home. So she's significantly less often in work mode than I am. I'm pretty much always there. So it's interesting. And she's only working 2 days a week, so we have a little bit less risk of it bleeding too much into family life, because it's not every day for her. It's starting to become more and more. She's working even when she's not in the office. But it's interesting seeing that the point of view of the person who is all in on the business, doesn't have the same passion for the business tactics or the nuts and bolts of the business. Like you said, Alicia is not an accountant by any means. She can understand it if she needs to, and can help with processes, and that's really where she thrives. But she's not an accountant. So another benefit for me, and I don't think you have this one with Todd because he's also a nurse, is having someone from outside the industry gives you a whole different perspective. Because sometimes you just do something because that's how you know to do it. But then when she comes in and says, "Why are you doing this?" and you're like, I don't know. It's just how the thing evolved.
Right.
So it's nice to have that to bounce off of, and really just give you the outsider's perspective. And Todd and you are very different in a lot of ways. You're very similar in a lot of ways, but it's we were talking about it the other week. You're on one extreme, Todd's on the other extreme, and you need someone to referee. And you've got a couple people there. Myself, one of them. You have some mentors, you have some employees that are comfortable enough with you guys that they can say, listen, I don't think either of you are right.
You're both wrong.
Yeah, it's somewhere in the middle here. And I think that helps too, that I don't know if it works as well if it would just be you and Todd.
Correct.
Right? No matter what the size is. You guys are too big for it to be 2 people anyways, but I think if it was just you and Todd left to duke it out, I don't think progress would be made at all.
Right. And I think too it's important if you have an entrepreneurial mindset. So I guess less about what you do or what type of profession it is, versus as entrepreneurs are built completely different. And a lot of times someone who, you know, and it's not good or bad because you can't have everyone's an entrepreneur.
Right.
But
that'd be a scary world.
Right. So, you know, it really comes down to entrepreneurs think differently, behave differently, or wired differently. And that can be good and bad as well, because typically, you mentioned it, entrepreneurs don't have a shut-off time. It's like, I'm just going to go until I'm exhausted, or I'm going to go until I complete the task. With someone who is working as an employee or working as a staff person, they know the start and the end time, and they're pretty good about saying, like, I can finish that tomorrow, or I'll work on that another day. To where I feel for an entrepreneur, it is, and we don't think it's a problem.
Right.
But that's where, as entrepreneurs, we have to do better at recognizing that just because we're built that way and we want to do those things. I kind of go back to fantasy football. It's a big thing that goes on, and we do have many males in the office, so during fantasy football it was like, that was what they talked about in the morning, that's what they talked about at lunch, it's what they talked about at the end of the day. I thought, this is how they must feel when every time they see my face, I'm like, hey, what if we do this? Or compassionate care needs this. So that gave me a little perspective that, I probably need to show up and have an intentional conversation and it not be business related or not be related to the profession that I'm passionate about, and, connect on those meaningful levels. I do it with nurses all day long, but I was forgetting to do it with my family, including my 10-year-old son, because he said it. Can we talk about something else?
Right. He's getting good training though.
He is.
So he's gonna be an entrepreneur probably.
I think so.
Well, he already is.
Yes.
I mean, he buys and sells stuff online all the time, right?
He does. He trades baseball cards and football cards, and has a variety of things that he works on and that he's passionate about. So I have no doubt that he has that ability. I think it's just going to be him tuning in and finding out what it is on the big scale.
He likes to negotiate too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Best negotiator. He doesn't stop until it's either an absolute no, or you just completely say, you can have it.
So kind of back on track. One thing that Alicia's done well for me, not even working in the office, but just as my spouse, is I can work all day. Like, I get up early and get to work before the kids are even awake. A lot of times I'll be out of the house, and she's probably more often than she should have to reminding me, like, be here in the morning, that this is like, the day seems to go better for everybody if you're here in the morning. So I think it's important too to have support system, whether they're in your office or at home, that can really ground you in what's going on. Because it's, like you said, it's easy for an entrepreneur to just keep going. And I know there's been times where you were telling me about something you did, and it was like 2 a.m, and I'm like, I'm right there with you.
Absolutely.
I get it. If it's on your mind, it's on your mind. You might as well. I mean, for me, if something wakes me up at night, I'm not going back to sleep until I resolve it. And even then, I might not go back to sleep. So I might as well go get some work done, right?
That is so true. And then a lot of times we don't think about how that's impacting anyone else. We're like, well, what's the big deal? They're sleeping at 2 a.m. So that shouldn't be a problem. But at the same time, from their view, they're just seeing someone who's completely connected to work. And then they can feel like you're disconnected from them, in your personal relationship, in the family, all of it. And it's not meant to be that way, but I think when you're so passionate and you truly believe in what you do and you're driven to make it happen, it just automatically occurs. Kind of like when you're driving a car. Have you ever passed the exit that you were supposed to get off of? Because it's just kind of like, this is what I'm doing. I was enjoying the music, and I wasn't really thinking about, something beyond that.
Yeah, it's easy to get an autopilot. And I find that there's a couple reasons that happens for me. Sometimes it's, you don't want to let your client down, right? You want to make sure that what you promise them you're going to deliver. And more than likely, I'm over-promising, which is creates stress for myself, my family, my staff, and causes that issue. Or there's also financial pressure, so I need to get this done so I can get the invoice out the door and be able to make payroll next week. But then there's also, like you said, just that drive to be successful. You want to be the best at what you're doing. I think every entrepreneur probably has that. There's a few that I've met that are happy with where they are. They're at a whatever age they decide they're comfortable with where they are, and as long as things don't go backwards, which I don't think generally things either go backwards or forward, they don't usually stay the same, but there are some industries where it's pretty easy to stay the same. But I think for the most part, entrepreneurs are so driven that it's easy to get blinded by the next task or the next opportunity, especially for me, like closing the next deal so that we can get bigger. And I don't want to get bigger for bigger's sake. I want to get bigger so I can help more people. but you need to get the finances in order to be able to do that.
Absolutely.
And I know finances is something that I started helping you with probably 7-8 months ago, I would say. We're not going to get into specifics, obviously, but we talked about how it's a nightmare in healthcare with finances.
Yes.
So can you tell us just kind of like the revenue cycle for you as opposed to the expense cycle, and some of the challenges that creates, and what you've done personally and mentally to kind of get used to being in that tough spot?
Yeah, it's incredibly challenging. You know, we're dealing with a client base that they are in the same position. They provide services and then they have to wait to be reimbursed for those services, and sometimes what they're being reimbursed may not even meet what they've put out, depending on, you know, how much.
Especially in COVID.
Absolutely. Yeah, COVID was a big thing because, you know, facilities were really tasked with the fact of providing PPE, you know, being in compliance. Compliance alone, complete and total nightmare. And especially when, you know, the guidelines were constantly changing, and they still are. It's hard to win a game when someone is constantly moving the goalpost.
Right.
So we are incredibly, I shouldn't say I am incredibly passionate about being empathetic regarding that, concerning the communities that we serve, because, you know, honestly, no one, at least I don't know anyone who's in business that just intentionally wants to have, you know, financial difficulties or, you know, pay for things late. That's not the goal. So if the reimbursement structure was different, then the industry as a whole would look much differently.
Right.
I've recently reflected on it, and I'm very much considering doing something in the marketplace that would impact long-term care communities by way similar of what hospitals do, which is, you know, getting donations, fundraising, doing a variety of different things, because there's really a gap there that's being unaddressed. So the community that we serve, we're passionate about helping our patients, and, you know, that's what nurses care most about. It's like, I don't care what this costs. This is, you know, this patient needs it, and we want to get it taken care of for them. You know, from the financial standpoint, that's
not reality.
That's not reality. So as, you know, costs have risen for everything, and especially in the labor force, given that, you know, there is such a shortage, and places are at the mercy also of the labor shortage, because you now have individuals of, do you want to go to work and make X, and you're responsible for 2 and 3 times the workload of what previously was seen, or do you want to go to work at Target? Nothing against Target or Giant Eagle or any of those kind of places, but do you want to go there and not have that responsibility? If you drop a can of beans, oh well, you're not going to get fired for it, you know, and you're going to make more money.
Right.
So there's a complete cycle with things. One of the things, Dave, specifically that you've been able to help us with is developing a process. Sticking to our processes and really being firm in the fact that benefits everybody. Because if we don't have a process, and, you know, we're not able to let everyone know what the expectation is, then inadvertently it also is something that decreases our impact, because then we're not able to provide professional services. So ultimately, it's like a big circle.
Yeah.
Everything everyone does ends up coming back and affecting the patient in a negative way, affecting nurses in a negative way. So, you know, our biggest driving force behind this is the impact that we can make and solving problems.
Yeah.
You know, there are a lot of companies that just want to make money.
Right.
That's all they care about. For us, that's not, you know, of course, you need money to operate.
Right.
There's no one that probably goes into business and says, I don't want to make money.
Right. That's called a nonprofit. Right. It's not a business.
Right. But the biggest driving force is we care about the impact we make for nurses and, you know, the patients that are in their care. And we want to be the bridge between both and make sure that both ends are satisfied, because if not, there's going to be a negative outcome for both of them.
Right.
You know, so you really have to find common ground, and it's difficult. You know, as a financial person, there's times that you and I have conversations that I'm like, well, I don't like that.
Right.
And you say, well, you Melissa, you don't have to like it, but that's what we have to do. And, you know, you have to have someone like that in your operation too, because a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we do care so much about what we are doing that you can lose sight of those things as well, and that can hold you back.
Yeah, I tell clients all the time, I said, I can't, and you don't want me to care as much about your business as you do.
Right.
Because if we're all making emotional decisions, something bad's going to happen. And that's one thing I think you do really well, is you have a lot of people around you, and you're humble and have enough humility that you listen and actually, like, if your idea wasn't good, you're perfectly fine admitting that and saying, well, that one was better. I mean, it was Todd's idea, but we'll do it. I mean, so you don't have a problem. You're coachable, I would say, more than most entrepreneurs. I think you have, and I think that's the nursing side of you too, because your heart is to please people and to help as many people as possible. And when you put those two things together, and you're not like overly pleased, like you'll put your foot down. I've been there when you've done it, but you know that you don't know everything. You can't know everything. Nobody can. And the goal isn't to make Melissa feel good. The goal is to help as many people as possible. So I think at the beginning of this, I asked why nursing, and you said to help people. And I think every decision I've seen you make is from that bent. Like whether you intentionally think of it at that moment or not, but that's just how you make decisions. Like you said, collecting on a payment that can be difficult helps you stay in business to help more people. It's not a selfish thing. I mean, I've seen plenty of entrepreneurs not take paychecks for a very long period of time because their mission was more important than their paycheck.
Absolutely.
And I've seen you do that.
Absolutely.
I think we're past that point. I hope so.
I hope so too. I think you're exactly right, Dave. It really comes down to what your purpose and what your mission is. And our mission is truly to pour into nurses as much as we can, and to make sure that they are empowered and they are equipped to be able to go into difficult situations and do things that maybe nobody else wants to do, be walking in the door when other people are walking out, having a good attitude when other people are saying, I give up, I'm not doing this anymore. Because at the end of the day, it's not having the luxury of saying, well, that can wait until tomorrow, or we'll just shut down production and start again tomorrow. These are human lives. And one thing that really humbles me about it is thinking about the age group and the population of people that we provide care to, thinking about what they lived through. Thinking about, they lived through very difficult financial hardships, and some of these people have given up everything that they worked so diligently and so hard for, to be placed into a facility and have their health care managed, and or they're a person maybe that doesn't have any family. We're looking at a generation that some of these individuals have out-survived their children. Most of them have out-survived their spouses. So they may be the last person left. A population I think about are the veterans that are elderly at this point. We have World War II veterans that we take care of. And when you think about their life history and hear things from them, it's golden. I can't think of a profession that you could get more from. You brought up mentorship, and one of the things that inspired me to be able to have the ability and the strength to do something like what we do is listening to that age group tell you the things that they've lived through, what they've overcome, how they continue on. My own grandmother, I hear her voice in my head that says, you just put one foot in front of the other. You get up every day and put one foot in front of the other. And, you had mentioned earlier that there are times as an entrepreneur that I throw in the towel, or why do I do this?
Right.
And it's so true. But if you can get through that difficulty, the reward is on the other side of, well, I made it through that.
Right.
I can make it through the next challenge. And I know, because of how we met, what your faith is. Mm-hmm. And one thing I always go back to is give it to God.
Yeah.
If God has a purpose for me, and this is his plan for my life, then he will find a way. Sometimes that causes difficulty in the boardroom when we're all sitting around a table, because no one wants to hear that that's my answer, that God's going to solve this problem for us, and we don't need to spend a lot of time worrying about it. And it's like, no, we have to find a plan and put a process in place. But I really, truly feel that way.
Yeah. I think being an entrepreneur, I've been doing it for 5 years now. I've never been more grounded in my faith or more mentally tough, I think, as I've gotten over the past 5 years. I don't think I was very mentally tough growing up. I think I was pretty soft if I truly evaluate myself, and I'm sure my dad would agree. But I think this experience, owning a business, you've been doing it for 20 plus years, there's no better education system. Because, think about all the skills you have to run a business, especially starting from when you started the business. Was it just you?
Yes.
Like you were an independent contractor, and then you said, I can get someone else to join me. And,
yes.
And you went from one person to a couple hundred now, I think. Right?
We have, we've grown tremendously, and especially in the last 3 years. Mm-hmm. We had the potential to grow even more. However,
I shut that down.
Yes, yes, and also going back to why we do this. I never want it to be that we don't know who someone is.
Right.
We meet with each individual that we serve in person. We do that to make the connection.
Yeah.
We do that because we want to let that person know that we're there for them. This isn't you're on your own. This isn't, well, we'll just talk to you if we need you to go X, Y, Z. This is really, and I've had mentors that have told me that's the wrong thing. You're not Dr. Phil. You can't be there for everyone and go through every challenge with individuals. I have no desire to do that either, but I do have a desire to let people know that they are someone above and beyond their career.
Yeah. Because
none of us are, that's not what they put on your tombstone.
Right.
When we're no longer here, it's not going to say, Dave Viliotti, CPA.
I might. Who knows?
Maybe.
I might put it on there. But yeah, it says wife, husband, father, daughter, whatever. There's a much better description of you than what your job is.
Absolutely. And I think one thing that humbles me too, I remember my grandfather, who was a very hardworking man. Worked multiple jobs his whole entire life. And he could see that spark in me that was like that drive that I'll work 2 and 3 jobs. I worked a full-time job while I was going to nursing school. After I got out of nursing school, I've never only had one job. So it's really foreign to me to only work a 40-hour work week.
Right.
And my grandfather would tell me, don't get so busy working that you forget to have a life. And when I was younger, I thought to myself, that's so silly. Like, what else would I be doing?
Right.
I'd probably be doing something that got me in trouble or that you wouldn't like to know that I was doing. So it's a good thing that I'm working. And being an entrepreneur and doing what we do at Compassionate Care allows everyone to have that freedom and that autonomy over their career and to do what they love and have that balance around their life. Right. To not say, I have to pick between my career. My grandfather didn't have a choice.
Right.
It was a matter of putting food on the table and, paying the bills that gave him the drive. Plus, I do think that he was an individual who enjoyed to work and to stay busy. I think that's the way he was wired. But I remember him approaching the end of his life and multiple times saying, how much time that he did spend at work and how much time he was away from his family. And you could feel that he had resentment towards that. And, I hope it was consoling to him, but I said, but you did impact your family.
Right.
You provided for your family. You're a good dad because without you doing those things, then you wouldn't have provided food and clothing and shelter. So I think a lot of times too, the thing of beating yourself up.
Yeah.
And I know women do that a lot.
Right.
Is should I pick being at home with my family or should I pick my career? So that's another, great angle. And we have dads on our team as well that are very passionate about being at their children's sporting events, being, full-time dads, part-time dads, and making sure that they're able to fulfill both as well.
Yeah, that's good. It's so important to really value the people. And to honor the people that are making sacrifices for your clients, for you, for themselves, and really just keep in mind why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah, I think for so many nurses, it is a profession, exactly what you had mentioned during this, that they're held to a level of perfection. With that being said, with all the legislation and rules and everything that factors into it, most of the time what you're hearing from, upper management or individuals that supervise above you is what you didn't do.
Right.
Or what you didn't do right. So, one thing that we're passionate about is never forgetting what people do right. And that when they make a mistake or when they fall a little bit short, showing some grace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as you build people up so much and you have such a good relationship, they almost feel worse than you do when they make a mistake. So you can have that grace. You don't have to remind them. You can just say, hey, we were made aware of this, like what do you have to say? And I think I've heard you talk about situations where the person just let it all out and was emotionally overwhelmed because of the mistake they made, and
Absolutely.
They felt like they let you down, let themselves down, let the patient down. So if you're building those people up, then the discipline almost takes care of itself because they don't want to let you down.
Absolutely. And two, when it's the individual is an individual and treated that way. Now, of course, we have to have teamwork and we have to work together. Yeah. But treating people as individuals really brings it back to them that, there is accountability, but we want to recognize with accountability, it shouldn't be, a lot of people think of accountability as, I'm going to tell you when you do something wrong. Well, accountability is also telling people when they do something right.
Yeah.
And if you're only telling the negative, you're just going to get more of the negative, because eventually a person feels like, this is all I ever hear. I'm never going to hear anything above this. So, giving that positive feedback. And, I truly believe that there's always something good in everything. Now, there are individuals that, shouldn't be in healthcare. There are, just like any profession, there are individuals who, have lost their passion for it and, they're leaving healthcare. There's a profound study that's going on right now, really taking a hard look at how many individuals are leaving healthcare. And, I think it is worth evaluating and saying, this is a problem.
Right.
This isn't coincidence.
Right.
And we can blame COVID, but COVID, that can't be the answer for everything. And we really sell ourselves short saying, well, they're just leaving because of COVID, or they're just leaving because they can make $1 more at the Target. No, we really need to look at what the problems are and say, one of those is the way that nurses are treated, and expecting too much, letting them know it's okay to say no.
Yeah.
I'm never upset if someone sets a boundary and says, I'll never do a night shift. That's just not my thing.
Right.
Well, forcing someone to do something they don't want to do and that they know that they're not good at doing is never a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I think we're about out of time. So the last question I'd like to ask is, if you were giving advice to somebody starting a business or has a business that wants to achieve some level of success, what advice would you have for them?
My advice to them would be to know that there will be days that you're going to have to remind yourself of why you started. And to know that when you get in those difficult seasons or those difficult moments, that on the other side is perseverance. A lot of people get to almost the point of success, and they quit right before they get there.
Yeah. So
just, keep in mind that it's a roller coaster ride. You're going to be up, you're going to be down, and to always remember what the objective is. Also, not to be too hard on yourself, and only, again, it goes back to even our self-talk of looking at what decision I didn't make right, or when there is an error, or when you get a complaint about something. Look at those things as education, because as you pointed out, really entrepreneurship is probably the best education you can get. It's a lot of learning as you go, on the job experience.
Right.
But it's things that you would have never learned otherwise. So not giving up. Also get yourself around good individuals that will be honest with you. You gave me a lot of grace by saying that I'm pretty humble. I am, but I'm also very, very stubborn. So a lot of difficulties, and God revealing to me that, okay, you got a hard lesson here to learn because you don't want to listen. So that sharpened my listening skills and being able to open up my ears and say, well, wait a minute. Maybe I don't agree with what Dave has to say, but I should hear him out, because even though I'm going to be the final one making the decision, maybe there's something in my blind spot. Yeah. It's kind of like driving the car and saying the kids shouldn't have a vote in it. Well, maybe they see someone in the right lane that you're getting ready to run into. Yeah. So it's worth hearing it out and making sure that you're looking at things from all sides. And I know that was a multifaceted answer, but
the more advice, the better. So. Being able to persevere. I mean, I think they say half of success is showing up.
It is.
And then I've heard it said before, being successful isn't doing 1,000 things great one time. It's doing one thing great 1,000 times. Yeah. And I think that's part of what gets lost. There can be a lot of minutia in it. So sometimes you just have to plow through and get to the other side. And like you said, a lot of people quit when it gets hard, but right on the other side of that hard is that success.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think the other thing is not to look at failure as being terminal.
Yeah.
We kind of look at failure and say, I don't want any part of that. Well, I'm here to tell you that some of my best lessons that I've learned are from the failed parts. They are from the things that were undesirable, uncomfortable, painful at times. Times we had to put a tourniquet on something, not literally, but but in the aspect of the business to stop the hemorrhaging, and then learn how to walk, learn how to do it and move forward.
So that was another episode of the podcast. We appreciate Melissa coming out, talking to us, sharing with us about her business, Compassionate Care Unlimited. And we will be having more podcasts. We've got a couple more scheduled. If you have any ideas or suggestions on people we should interview, we'd love to hear it. Send us a note either on any of the social medias, comment on our videos. We'd love to hear from you and hear how we can grow together. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Businesses Start Here podcast. We hope you were inspired and encouraged by today's podcast. We would love to hear your feedback. Please send us an email at podcast@villiotti.com. That's podcast@villiotti.com. And be sure to share, like, and comment all of our content.